Hey guys, it's Derek. Hope you're having a fantastic day. In this free Webflow tutorial, I'll teach you how to create a CMS blog or a portfolio or a listing, whatever you would like. So let's go ahead and jump into some example websites. In this first example website, hbspca/stories, you can see all these are in a CMS post. And when you click into any one of these, this takes you to a CMS Indepth page. We'll go ahead and display that blog content. In this specific case, we may have some sort of image, we have the title of the blog, we have the category or the tag of the blog, who it's written by, when it was posted, and then we have the content on the left-hand side, as well as some additional blogs on the right-hand side, which you can click and it takes you to that specific blog page. Another example of what we can do in the CMS doesn't have to be blogs, although we'll be focusing on how to build a blog. This can be applied to anything. For example, in this website, this is actually a directory built in the CMS. So this is showing effectively company profiles. If you click into one of them, let's say positive footprints, this will take you into an in-depth CMS page where instead of displaying blog content in this specific website, it displays content about that specific company. For example, a bit about them, their specialities, their qualifications, completed projects, etc. Let's take a look at two more examples just to wet your feet. Right now in this example website, dereksu.com.au/tutorials, this person is using a CMS not necessarily for blogs, but for tutorials. For example, if we click into one of them, card flip effect, you'll notice this specifically talks about how to build this card flip effect in Webflow. And it's almost laid out like a blog page, and it has all the content, even has a table of content on the left-hand side. And if you scroll all the way down, it also has the you may also like. Lastly, we can also build the CMS for a portfolio. So for example, in this website, horizon.co/work, we can go ahead and scroll down to one of them, let's say Boston Dynamics. When we click into that CMS item, it takes us to the in-depth CMS page. And obviously horizon.co is like top of the top in terms of work, with Boston Dynamics, the robots that's going to take over the future. But you can see that this is also built in the Webflow CMS, and this takes you to an in-depth page with different content and different layout. So the whole point is there's many ways you can build a blog in the CMS, and it's not limited to a blog. Once you complete this tutorial, you'll have the sound understanding of how to build everything, and you can go ahead and do whatever you would like, as always. So let's quickly jump into Webflow. So right now, I just have a blank site in my Webflow project, and we want to go ahead and head over to Pages, and perhaps we want to create a new page, and we'll create new page, and we'll go ahead and give it a page name of blog. You'll notice whatever page name you add, there is a slug, which is the URL that's automatically generated based on the name. So in this case, my actual URL would be website.com/blog. That's something just to keep in mind. You can change the slug. I'm happy with this, so I'll go ahead and hit create. And then from here, I'm just going to go ahead and perhaps just add a div block, and I'll just give this a class of header, and I'll just do something crazy. Like I'll just put some padding all around. I'll change the background color to, let's just say, a red, and I'll go ahead and add a heading, and I'll just go ahead and change this to blogs and perhaps add a paragraph text, and that's it. Obviously this isn't about how to style the specific blog content, but this is how to use the CMS. So once that's done, let's go ahead and head over to our collections. So with the new Webflow UI, the collections is actually at the top left right here. Previously, it was actually on the left-hand side panel, but now it's right here. So now if we actually head over to CMS, we can go ahead and see that right now in my project, there is no CMS items. So we can go ahead and hit create a collection right here, but this is effectively the same thing as hitting this plus button right here. So in the user interface of Webflow, there's many buttons that does the exact same thing. So in this case, we'll go ahead and hit plus right here, and this will go ahead and prompt us to create a new collection list. Because this specific tutorial is about how to make a blog post, let's go ahead and give it a name, collection name right here, of blogs. And you'll notice this automatically created that URL as I kind of alluded to earlier. Furthermore, you may notice above this specific setting right here, this gives you a bunch of ideas or suggestions in Webflow. So this is suggesting, did you want to create a blog post? Do you want to create some categories? Do you want to create some events? You can go ahead and hit these, and this will go ahead and load predefined fields. However, I'm going to go ahead and start from scratch. That's what I want to show you guys. So in this case, I'm giving my collection name blogs. You'll notice again, the collection URL is blogs with an S. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. And then right here are the collection fields. So by default, there is the name and the slug, which we kind of just alluded to earlier once again. But you'll notice below this, it says custom fields. And this is where we can actually add the fields that we want. For example, earlier, I showed you some example websites. For example, portfolio sites. You may want to put some videos or some images or some project description, project completed date. Whereas the blog post, you might not need that. You might just need a long content with the date posted. So this is the power of the Webflow CMS. If we hit add field, you notice there's different field options. But in this case, we'll just stick to a basic blog. So in this case, let's go ahead and add a date/time, and we'll go ahead and give this a label. So we can name the fields so we can actually easily identify it. In this case, I'm just going to give it a label of date posted, and I'll hit save field. And you'll notice before I hit save field, there's actually something called a help text. So whenever you populate this specific text, you can even see it on the right-hand side as I type into it. This is a help text. When a specific person goes in and creates a new CMS item, let's say your admin or one of your staff members, they can easily see what this specific custom field is. You can see the help text right now says this is a help text. That's what I'm adding here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And there's a lot of different fields and different options. But in this case, I'll just hit save field. The next one is maybe I want to add field, and I want to add an image because I want to add it in the card as well as the header image. But I'm going to hit image. I'm going to go ahead and give this a label of, let's say, blog main image and thumbnail. I'll go ahead and hit save field. Again, before I do, you notice each of these specific custom fields have different options right here that's pertaining to whatever we selected. You would also notice on the bottom left, it has a checkbox that says this field is required. So for example, in this blog page, if we want that specific card image or that main background image in the header to always be there, it will be wise to tick this as a required field. Otherwise, an example of not required field will possibly be, for example, year completed. And if it's not actually applicable, then we don't need this to be a mandatory field. So that's what that is. I'm just going to go ahead and tick it. The next thing I want to add is just a rich text content right here. And I'll just go ahead and give this a name of content. I'll hit save field. And I believe that's pretty much it. We can also add one more, which is the categories, but I'll do that a bit later. Now that's done, I can go ahead and hit create collection. And what you'll notice is this will go ahead and create our first collection. Right here on the top left-hand side of the screen, you notice it says blogs. So that's perfect. But you also notice it says no items. That's because we haven't created the CMS items yet. So right now, because this is an empty state, you'll notice Webflow says this collection doesn't have any items yet. And Webflow actually gives you the ability to generate some sample items. So you can actually hit this button right here, and this uses AI to produce whatever items you want. So I'm actually going to use this functionality. So I'll just put 20 items, and you can go ahead and prompt the AI to describe what you want. So in this case, I'll maybe say, make blog post relating to fish. Then I'll go ahead and hit generate, and this will automatically populate all the specific CMS fields that we've created, and it'll create 20 of them via AI. Obviously, we can manually add them, which I'll show you shortly. Okay, so you'll notice the AI has literally generated 20 different items, and this is how all the CMS works. We've just created a blog CMS, and you notice it generated 20 of the CMS items, and it populated each of the fields. So in order to navigate each CMS item, we can literally just click into it. For example, this first one, the art of fish cooking. If we click into it, you'll notice it automatically populated the name, it automatically generated the slug, it just put a random date right here. It also added a image, like a main image. Then it also added some content in a rich text element. This is amazing. AI did all of this. So with this in mind, I'm going to go ahead and hit back. And these are all our specific CMS items. Now, if we just go back into the designer view by just hitting this button again, CMS right here, this takes us back to this view. I'm going to go ahead and just pin my layer panel on the left-hand side so you can always see it. But I'm going to go ahead and just add a div block. And maybe I'll just give this a div of, let's say, section. And I'm just going to add some padding. And I'm going to go ahead and add a collection list right here. And this is also found if we hit the plus and we scroll all the way down to collection list right here. That's what I did. I'm just hitting the shortcut Command E, which allows us to find anything. So with that collection list added, you'll notice this is what a CMS is. It's actually in a purple interface. And if we go ahead and expand the specific layers or the box model, you'll notice it actually has a bunch of things. So firstly, we have that wrapper. That's the parent. Then inside, we have a collection list. And then inside the collection list, we have collection item, which is the child. Then you also notice besides that, the sibling is empty state right here. So if we actually hit collection list wrapper, the main one, and we head over to the right-hand side and hit settings, this is where we can go ahead and change the settings of whatever we have selected. In this case, it's a CMS. So if we hit settings, you'll notice right here, we can go ahead and connect this specific item right here with source. It says none. If we hit this drop down, you'll notice this loads all the CMS collections that we've created. In this case, we've only created blog. And again, there's many ways to do this. Another way we can do this is just double click on that specific canvas, and this will go ahead and open up that drop down. This is the exact same drop down that we just showed you earlier. So if I hit this drop down, I'm gonna go ahead and connect it to the blogs right here. And this, you'll notice, created 10 of these specific items, and it's all stacking on top of each other, which is exactly how web works. So in this specific case, if I just click into the collection list and I go into the collection item, you'll notice right here, it's created 10 of these because it's loading all the CMS items. The next thing to note is if we go into collection list settings right here, we can see in the UI state, it says items or empty. This is the empty state right here, something to note. This one right here will display when there's nothing, when there is no CMS items. And that's how you actually style this specific empty field. So you can say, sorry, no results found. We are still updating our site. That's the empty state. Similar to forms, how when you submit a form, there's a success state. So if we go back to the collection list, we can go ahead and add stuff inside the collection item. So in this case, we may want to add an image. And you'll notice when I add an image inside this specific box right here, this automatically just creates 10 of them because we have 10 CMS items. Super cool stuff. The next thing we can do with the collection items selected, I might add a heading and I might change this to a header too, and that's it. So with the heading selected right here, cool thing is I can hit this gear icon right here, and where it says text, if I change the text to, let's say, something like this, you'll notice it's duplicating 10 times. That's because the CMS is linked. We haven't added any dynamic content. We only added static content. That's why it's repeating itself. The cool thing about the Webflow CMS, which is super powerful if you wrap your mind around, we can actually hit this purple button right here and go ahead and pull in the CMS fields that we created earlier. In this case, let's pull in the name. Now you'll notice it's pulling each unique name right here. Very, very powerful stuff. If you guys are absolute beginner, this is mind-blowing stuff. Next thing is with the image, we can go ahead and hit this gear icon, hit the purple plus right here, and pull in that main image. Go back to style, and we can go ahead and add this a class. Let's just call it blog_thumbnail. And maybe I just want the width to be, let's say, 100%. And I want the height to be, let's say, 12 rems. That looks cool. Maybe we'll change the more size option. We'll change the fit to cover, and that's cool. Perhaps the next thing we want to do is just add a text box inside the collection item. We'll go ahead and add text. And we'll go ahead and hit the plus. And we can go ahead and pull in the date posted right here. And perhaps I want to move this above the title, so I can go ahead and do that. And lastly, maybe we want to add a button. And we'll go ahead and change the button text to be read blog. And with the button, we can even select it, hit the settings, and you'll notice right here where we can add the link to the button, there is an option right here where it says collection page. So we can go ahead and select that, and go ahead and change the page to current blog. That means when we hit this button, it'll take us to that specific blog page. This is very important stuff. If we head over to pages right here by hitting P, you'll notice by adding a blog CMS, where it says collection pages right here, we now have a purple page right here that says blog template. That's what happens when we click into that in-depth page. It has a unique page which we can pull in dynamic content. Something to note. Cool. Let's just quickly style this faster. So I'm going to go ahead and select that collection list right here. I'm going to go ahead and add style and put a class of CMS grid. And perhaps I want to change this layout to be grid, and 2 columns looks good. And maybe I'll change the gap to be 2.5 rems. That all looks good. Obviously, you can style exactly how you want. You'll notice with the CMS items, they all follow the exact same design/layout. For example, if I change this date and I move it between the heading and the button, all of them follow. So that's something to keep in mind. Everything looks uniformed. So I'm going to go ahead and just move that date just above the heading. And perhaps with the heading, I'm going to give it a class of h2 blog. And I'll just remove that top margin, put it to 0. And maybe with this specific blog thumbnail image, I'll put a margin below that of 18 pixels. And this is looking G. We can style this however we want. Once that's done, right, what we can do is head over to pages right here, and we can go ahead and select that blog template right here, this purple button. This will take us to the blog in-depth page. So right now what we can do is we can add a nav bar, add a footer, whatever you like. But in this case, I'll just add a div block, and I'll just give this a class of blog content and just put some random padding around it. Then in this case, I may be adding a heading, and I'll change this to be the name. So we can pull in the name. And then maybe just below this blog content right here, I can go ahead and just add an image. And this image, I'll go ahead and pull in that blog main thumbnail image. And I'll give this a class of, let's say, blog in-depth image. And I'll make sure it has a width of 100%. And I'll put the height to be, let's say, 40 VH, viewport height. And I'll go ahead and change the fit to be cover. And that looks cool. Let's go ahead and add a text box just above the heading 1. And we can go ahead and pull in the specific date. And that looks really good. Now below this, I'm going to go ahead and just add a div block, like below the main image. And I'll give it a class of, let's say, blog underscore content underscore wrapper. And then in this specific blog content wrapper, I'm going to go ahead and add a max width of, let's say, 800 pixels. And I'm going to go ahead and set the spacing to be auto. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a rich text element right here. And again, I'm hitting Command E to quickly search for it. But if you hit plus right here on the left-hand side, you'll notice rich text is right here underneath typography. And I've already made a tutorial in the past about rich text and the power of rich text. But essentially, a rich text allows us to add different headings, different text, allow us to add bolded text, hyperlinks, emphasis, images, videos, dot points, etc. It's really good for blog content in this case. So right now, with this rich text added, I can go ahead and hit this gear icon, and surprise, surprise, I can go ahead and pull in the specific rich text content by hitting this button right here. You'll notice this is automatically generated through the AI or Webflow, but that's the specific content. And the reason why I put this specific blog content wrapper div to be max width 800 pixels is because if I didn't do that, it's actually really hard to read. This is actually bad user experience. We're now talking about design, but you can imagine on a really wide screen, it's really hard to read a blog content when it's super wide. Your eyes will have to be like darting left and right. That's why I keep it 800 or below. So in this case, I might even add it to be 650 pixels. Just really thin. That looks great. Now, that's pretty much done. That's the whole premise of the blog. It's super powerful, but let's go ahead and add a couple more stuff. Let's go ahead and add a short description text that sits just below this specific heading and perhaps in the card. We'll also add a categories so I can show you guys how that works. So heading back to the CMS right here, we can go ahead and add a new CMS collection, and we can go ahead and give it a name of blog categories, right? Or we can just call it category. And you'll notice the URL just says categories. And in this case, we'll just leave it with the basic information, the name and the slug. Now, if we hit create collection, instead of automatically generating it, let's actually just manually add it this time. We'll hit new category, and we'll give it some categories, like for example, press release. And you'll notice once I added press release, it automatically saves it. It says items created as draft, and everything's done in real time. You don't have to hit save. It automatically saves it through the cloud. In the previous version of Webflow, this wasn't the case. You had to hit an extra button. So that's something cool. Now that's done, I can go ahead and hit this plus button, new categories right here. And this is the exact same thing if I hit this back button as hitting new category, this blue button on the top right. Again, many ways of doing things. Now if I hit plus, maybe I want to add another one. Maybe I'll call this general, and I'll just wait a bit, and you'll notice it's now saved. And I'll just add one last one, and I'll call it misc, which means miscellaneous or something like that. So that's done. Now if I hit back, you notice these are all my CMS items. One thing to keep in mind is the specific status. So right now it says published, it says not published. These three are not published. And status, it's currently set to draft, which means it will not be pulled in the CMS. So in order to change this, we can hit select right here, and we go ahead and select the ones that we want. Or we can go ahead and hit this button right here, which allows us to select everything. From here, we can hit update items, and this gives us a bunch of options. The most common ones are queue to publish, which means the next time you publish the site, it will then be published live. The next one is publish now. This will publish the CMS items immediately without needing to publish your website. It just goes straight up live. The next one is save as draft, which is currently set to draft. So in a way, draft is like it saves it in the back end, and you can always publish it in the future. And lastly, another one called unpublished. So you can take it from published to unpublished. so it removes it from the live site. And then there's also one called archive, which is similar to draft, where you can go ahead and take it away from the website, but you keep it in the backend just in case you want to restore it again. So in this case, I'll hit queue to publish, hit queue items, and now it's set to queue to publish. This means the next time the website's gonna hit publish, it's gonna go ahead and push all these CMS items live. Cool. So now if I go back to blogs, my CMS collection, I can go ahead and hit settings right here. And this allows us to add more custom fields whenever we want. This also allows us to delete custom fields by hitting this gear icon and hitting delete right here. Very powerful stuff. But in this case, I'm gonna add a new field. And the first field I'm gonna add is a plain text. And I'm just gonna call it short description. Hit save field. And then I'm gonna add another field. And I'm gonna give this a specific type of reference. I'm gonna hit this, give it a label of category. And what I can do with this is I can go ahead and choose the collection that it links to. So this blog CMS that we first created can now pull in CMS items from this secondary CMS collection we created called categories. So we'll go ahead and select that. We'll go ahead and hit save field. Now if we hit save collections, we can go ahead and hit each one, and you can scroll down and you'll notice it says category. You can hit that drop down and you notice these are the specific categories that we created in this other CMS. So now we're linking different CMS. Crazy stuff. So let's go ahead and just populate that real quick. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and manually added a category for each one. You'll notice I've just added something random. And I'm gonna go ahead and also paste this into the short description for each CMS item. And obviously I'm gonna jump forward so you guys aren't bored, but this is exactly what I'm doing. Cool, so I've just added a short description to each of these CMS items, and I've also added a category. So now that's done, I can go back into the designer view by hitting the CMS button. And you'll notice right here, underneath the heading, I can go ahead and just add a paragraph text, for example. I can go ahead and pull in that text from that short description that I've just added to each, which is just dummy text. So you notice that's now there. And perhaps what we can do lastly in this specific page is we can add another collection list, which is crazy. So in this specific case, what I can do is go back into the blog page right here. And in this specific case, I can go ahead and just copy this CMS list wrapper by hitting Command C or Control C, heading back to my blog template page right here, and perhaps I'll just paste it at the very bottom. So you notice it's right here. So in this specific case, I can go ahead and just wrap this in a div block, and I'll just give this a class of read more, perhaps, and I'll just give it some padding, and I'll also add a heading, and I'll just give it a heading of 2, and I'll just say read more, please, with 3 dots. And I'll go ahead and just drag this above the collection list. You'll notice that's the read more section. And in this specific read more parent div, maybe I'll change the background color to, let's say, light gray. So if you're a bit confused of like how I'm doing this, and if I'm jumping too far ahead, it's probably because you don't understand the box model or CSS classes. And I've already made separate tutorials for free on YouTube, so I encourage you to check that out. But now that's done, let's just say, for example, this is good. Maybe in the blog content, I'll just add a bit more padding top and bottom. That's essentially it. We have the date, we have the title, we have the short description, we have the background image, we have the rich text content, and now we have the read more. You'll notice in this specific blog's template page, if we hit pages, I'm selecting this page right here. At the very top, on the right-hand side, this is a specific CMS item. This is a drop-down that allows us to jump between different items. For example, let me go into the future of phishing. You notice this has different content. Obviously, I did not change the short description, so they all have the same content, but the rich text is different, and that's cool. So let's go ahead and just fix everything up. I noticed at the very bottom, this read more. I don't want this to show this many. I just perhaps only want to show 2. So with that collection list wrapper selected, we can go ahead and hit the settings. And right here where it says limit items, we can go ahead and toggle that on, and we can say show only 2. You'll also notice right here that this specific blog post is the future of phishing. Perhaps this will appear right here, which we don't want, because we don't want to read more of the exact same post. So we can actually add a filter. So right here where it says filters, we can hit plus, go ahead and change the first field to be the blog CMS, and we can say if this blog is not current blog. So therefore, this will never show this specific blog item twice in this specific page. Let's go ahead and go back to our blog page right here, and let's go ahead and hit that specific grid. And in this specific grid, we can actually change the different sort orders. So right now we hit sort, and we go ahead and change it from name, A to Z. This goes ahead and sorts everything for alphabetical order. Or we can actually name it from date posted newest to oldest. So this will show the newest to oldest. You can see all these dates are a bit random generated, like October 2023, but it's showing the newest to the oldest. And perhaps if you have a lot of these blog posts, you actually want to add something called Pagnation. This is where we have the next and the back buttons at the very bottom of the page. In order to do this, we can go ahead and select this Pagnate items right here, toggle it on, and you'll notice it says items. How many items do we want to Pagnate? We actually have 20 CMS items, so maybe let's just say, for example, 6. And if we hit 6, it shows us there'll be 3 different pages. It'll be 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3. If we actually scroll down, this only shows us 6 CMS items, then it has a next and a back button automatically generated. You'll notice by enabling Pagnation, it created this new div block called Pagnation. Obviously, we can go ahead and give it a class of Pagnation, and maybe we want to change some styling, like adding a top margin of 5 rems. But that's the premise. If we go ahead and just publish this site and just preview what we've done so far, you can see we have all the CMS items right here. It's only showing 6. And if we hit next, it shows us the next 6. And if you scroll down, you'll notice now there's a previous and a next button. But if you hit next one more time, you can see there's no more. So now it's going back to previous. So that's what Pagnation is. Super cool, powerful stuff. You also notice in our specific button, we already added that specific button to go to the current blog post. So we go ahead and select any of this. Let's say conservation of fish species, hit read blog. You'll notice it takes us to that in-depth page. Please also note the URL. Back into the CMS right here, you can see we created that CMS of blogs. If we hit this gear icon right here, you notice the collection URL is /blogs. That's what's appearing. Now if we hit cancel and we'll go into that specific blog post, this one here, you'll notice this CMS item is called conservation of fish species, and by default it generated a slug of this. That's what we're seeing right here. So if you have a really long slug name, you can go ahead and obviously change it to whatever you want. So perhaps it may be easier to share on social media, for example. You'll also notice in this specific page, it's pulling in the date, it's pulling in the name, it's pulling in the short description, it's pulling in that image which we're sharing in the field, and it's pulling in the rich text content, and it's showing 2 more of the read more. And if you want to go ahead and dictate what's in the read more, we can go back into Webflow and go ahead and head over to that collection page right here, and we can go ahead and scroll down to the read more CMS grid. And the right hand side, we can even add more filters. For example, we can hit plus, and we can go ahead and change the field to be the category which we've assigned, and we can say it has to equal the category of the current blog post. And speaking of the category, let's go ahead and add a new text box, and we'll go ahead and pull in the specific name of the category right here. You can see this specific parentheses indicates that it's a database. It's a CMS database, which we've created. If we hit this drop down right here, we can go ahead and pull in different items within that CMS collection. In this case, I just want to pull in the name, and you'll notice it says miss, which we've created. Let's go ahead and give this a class of CMS_category, and I'll just give it some padding, and maybe I'll just give it a background color of, let's say, this green, and I'll change the text color to be, let's say, green as well, like so. That looks cool. Obviously, maybe I'll add a width of, let's say, 12 rems, and I'll go ahead and maybe put the text to be in the center, but that's the category. So we can go ahead and copy this, and we can go ahead and just paste it below each one. So you'll notice it's pulling in the category. I know it looks like crap, but that's what's happening. We can even just copy this specific category that we just created, go back to the home page or the blog page, go ahead and paste it underneath this specific text, and you'll notice it's pulling in the category. This is general, this is miss, this is general, this is press release, etc. Now if we publish the site and I refresh the page, you'll notice it's showing the category. And if we scroll all the way down to read more, it's only showing the read more, limited to 2. It cannot show the exact same blog post, and it's only showing the ones that have the exact same category. So hopefully you can start to think about the amount of variables and stuff you can do with CMS. It's super powerful. Now that's done, that's essentially the whole blog page, or the blog functionality, or the CMS functionality. Again, hopefully you can understand that you can build whatever you want. Portfolios, housing listings, etc. Very, very powerful stuff. Obviously, you want to add a nav bar and a footer, maybe a back to blog page, but that's essentially the premise. So if we go back to my example website, and we'll go ahead and head over to About and hit Journal, this is built in the exact same premise, where we have a thumbnail image, we have the date, we have the description right here, and we have the heading text right here. And if we actually click into it, you'll notice it takes us to the Indepth page. And you'll also notice it pulls in the exact same content. So in this case, the heading, the short description. In my case, I had a custom field where you can add the audio to listen to this specific article. It has some share functionalities. It has a table content on the left, etc. But it's the exact same thing. I just have the content right here. And then I also have read more in some of my pages. So that's it. That's how you create a CMS blog post in Webflow. I really hope you understand the premise. CMS is a very powerful functionality. In fact, I actually have a Webflow course that I created, so feel free to check that out. It's actually in my website. If you head over to dereksu.com.au, you can actually drop down to Webflow course. And in this specific course, I cover many different things. In fact, I have a dedicated module that is almost 3 hours long talking about the CMS in more detail. For example, how to link different CMS items, the explanation of the remaining fields. So if we go back into Webflow right here, we'll go ahead and hit collections. We'll go ahead and hit settings. You'll notice if we hit custom fields, there's more custom fields like rich text, images, multiple images, etc. I explain all of this in great detail in my course. So if you do find value in this video, check out my course. Otherwise, I will continue to making free content on YouTube. So please give me a like and a comment. Check out more of my videos right here. I'll see you guys in the next one.